that he would not take another Pirates of the Caribbean franchise role for $300 million and a million alpacas?
No.
Entertain paying Mr. Depp more than $300 million and provide him with more than a million alpacas to be able to obtain his services for any future Pirates of the Caribbean role?
No.
I'm going to show you what has been marked as deposition exhibit to not take another Pirates of the Caribbean franchise role for $300 million and a million alpacas?
No.
Would Disney entertain paying Mr. Depp more than $300 million and provide him with more than a million alpacas to be able to obtain his services for any future Pirates of the Caribbean role?
No.
I'm going to show you what has been marked as deposition exhibit number 52 to...
Did you ever encounter any talk from JD of jealousy with respect to Amber? 2014. Did Mr. Depp ever tell you that he had a big fight with Amber at any time?
He would mention when shit was rough, yeah.
Movies, etc. Did you come to meet a person by the name of Johnny Depp?
Yes.
Can you specify in time, Ms. Barkin, when you met him?
I would say 1990. Yes.
And can you describe how that happened?
We just developed a friendship over time that lasted, I guess, if we met in the 90s, maybe 10 years, a little less.
And fair to say that Mr. Depp at the time was also an actor, a professional actor?
Yes.
Were you, did you act in any film, stage, or TV productions with Mr. Depp?
Yes, I was in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
How often would you see Mr. Depp?
When I lived in New York, usually whenever I go to LA, if I were in LA, I'd see him once a week, maybe more. I mean, the friendship went up and down, living on different coasts.
And did there come a time when your friendship with Mr. Depp became more than that, became romantic in nature?
Yes.
And at what point in time did your relationship with Mr. Depp take a romantic turn?
After I had moved to Hollywood, and he, switched the buttons.
Recall what year you moved to Hollywood?
Yes, 1994.
When you said switch the buttons, can you tell me what you meant by that?
The friendship went from a purely platonic friendship to a romantic one.
At that point in 1994, when the relationship turned romantic,
You'll change that to sexual.
To sexual.
Thank you.
That's one of them, right?
That's right.
Amber Heard is an abuser. That's one of them.
That is one of them.
We just don't like you, Amber. That's one of them.
That is one of them.
And the last one was Amber Turd, right?
That is another one.
Okay. And these four, but when you were deposed, you were asked whether these were related, these particular hashtags were related to any of the Wallman statements, and you said no at that time.
I said more than that. I said I didn't know, and then I said I'm basing I'm looking at Mr. Banya's opinion where he says they would be if they were in large number,
But the only person who's ever expressed this opinion to date in this courtroom is you, correct?
I would know. I haven't watched everything. I've watched a bit.
So
but
you're adopting your own opinion.
No, I'm adopting the opinion that I read in Mr. Banya's disclosure.
And that's not the opinion you had during your deposition.
I think I did make reference in my deposition to what Mr. Banya said, and that I agreed with it. That sounds correct.
Yeah. Amber Heard is an abuser, and Amber Turd first appeared in 2016, correct?
I don't recall, actually.
Right. Do you recall if there was any portion of Mr. Waldman's statement that made any reference to Amber Turd? There are spikes that existed considerably before Mr. Waldman's statement. You were asked about that by counsel?
One of them did. That was the date that Mr. Waldman leaked the audio tape.
The biggest spike was before the statements.
Right, the date he leaked the audio.
And then there were many statements that, or there are many hashtags, or uses of the hashtag, that follow the statements.
You'll have to be more specific.
Well, so you looked at 1.2 million of these hashtags, right?
That's not part of my opinion, one way or the other.
Well, do you have an opinion as to whether justice for Johnny Depp is a good thing?
That's not part of my assignment.
Okay, but you'll agree with me justice in general is a good thing?
Big fan of justice.
All right, me too. No further questions.
All right.
On February 17, that's the same email we've seen a couple times now where she's attaching the confidentiality agreement, telling that she'll have a draft post-NAP agreement, but she's getting... And whom did you receive that telephone call from? Mr. Depp. Please describe the telephone call from Mr. Depp.
My recollection is that he was very mean, that he called me names, and that he fired me on behalf of them.
When you say that he was very mean, what did you mean?
Well, my only exact recollection is he called me a bitch.
Mr. Depp called you a bitch on that telephone call?
Hearsay.
Yeah.
Those are relatives, all relatives.
I believe that's true.
Okay. And you are here today providing this deposition under a subpoena and then subsequent notice, correct?
Yes.
And when did you first become Mr. Depp's counsel?
I think that it was around October 2016.
And what is your role in this case as counsel for Mr. Depp?
Objection, and I would instruct the witness not to answer that question.
Okay, I'll follow the instruction.
When did you first meet Mr. Depp as opposed to first start representing him?
I first met him in October of 2016.
Began your representation?
I would instruct the witness not to answer that question. That calls for attorney-client privilege.
Okay, I follow the instruction.
Have you entered into more than one representation agreement with Mr. Depp during the course of your representation?
Same instruction not to answer. You can't answer that without disclosing attorney-client communications and attorney work product.
Mr. Waldman, when did you consider your attorney-client relationship with Mr. Depp to have begun?
I believe it began the night I met him, actually.
Sometime in October 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
Has the attorney-client relationship between you and Mr. Depp been severed at any point between October 2016 and the present?
Witness not to answer that question. You can't answer that without disclosing attorney client communications, and the fee arrangement in any event is irrelevant. But I'm instructing him not to answer on the grounds of privilege.
I accept the instruction. Yes, as a general matter, that's how I understand an attorney-client relationship.
And has Mr. Depp paid you advice?
I would instruct, I do instruct the witness not to answer on the grounds of attorney-client privilege. You can't answer that question without disclosing your communications with Mr. Depp.
I accept the instruction.
But I did, Amber she wanted Mexican food, so I did a big Mexican script.
When you say that when Mr.
They met for the rum diary, so he had the story about how she came in to his office and she sat on the couch and her perfect ass left a perfect imprint on the couch, and he wouldn't let anyone sit there after she left that day.
During the time that I was living there? Yes. Yes. On how many occasions? I wouldn't even be able to estimate. Was it more than 10? Yes. Was it more than 20? Yes. Was it more than 30? Yes. Was it more than 50? Again, I can't really speculate. I was there for quite some time. When did that first occur? I mean, I'm not privy to her comings and goings, and she had other friends than us that were coming to see her. So
it was slightly swollen, and by the way, you can see it in that video, so it's crazy to me, but it was slightly swollen, and there was either a gash or a scab, no, not a scab, but it was swollen with some kind of cut.
You never witnessed Mr. Depp being violent or abusive towards Ms. Heard and causing any injuries.
Correct.
So let's talk about the makeup that you actually used to conceal these injuries on her face on December 16th. I believe you testified you used a concealer with dealing with injuries or covering up bruising on people. Do you have any specific experience or education?
Specific experience, I have experience in doing bruises and cover bruises for special effect. Yeah, I mean, throughout my career, I have created bruises, and I also have covered bruises for, with models or real life things, whatever it is. So, yeah, I have experience in covering some bruises, yes.
Swelling, same question.
I mean, it's a little harder to cover swelling. That would be maybe, try to bring the swelling down. Covering it up would be harder.
2011 to 2016, did Mr. Depp ever abuse illicit drugs?
Yeah, I mean, I think that abuse is the wrong word, but, I think that, it was going on. It wasn't like crazy rock and roll house. No, it was just getting high.
What? Oh.
Getting high.
Okay. Getting high on cocaine?
Yeah, once in a while, if I saw it, I mean, a handful of times I saw it. I don't think he liked to do it in front of me.
Did you ever observe forgetfulness in Mr. Depp after he'd been drinking or using substances?
Forgetfulness? No, I think that he's got a pretty good memory, but, my personal experience with him, no.